Hey guys, Pastor Kenny here doing our devotionals from our reset series that we have gotten back into here in 2021 as we're walking through the book of Philippians. And just want to encourage you today and encourage you as you watch this, as we kind of continue these, as we reset our lives, as we reset for a new year and walking through the book of Philippians. But before we get there, let me ask you a question. Have you ever had to do something hard? Whatever it is, think back through your whole life. If it's something hard you have to do, put it in the comments below. Type it out, whatever it is. Maybe it was a sport in school. Maybe it was some life circumstance you had as an adult. Maybe you think back to your childhood and it's, I had to sit still for a few minutes. What is it that was a hard situation that you've ever had to go through? Maybe it's something you've wondered if it was worth it, maybe through that, right? That you were like, man, is it even worth it to keep going on this? Or it's something that you thought about giving up on in part of it. One thing that has been this for me more recently is something Beth and I started all the way back in October. We started doing this puzzle right here. So yes, it's Cinderella's glass slipper. And this puzzle that is nice and small here is actually like a 2 foot by 3 foot 1,000-piece puzzle. And we've been putting it together since I think it was October we started. And the first couple days went great, right? I mean, I love this about puzzles. You get the outline, you can find all the edge pieces, you start there, and then you get to the middle, right? And this is where in November it slowed way down for us. And here we are in January still trying to finish this puzzle. Because I got the edges, Bethany got Cinderella done, and now we're working on these last few pieces. A lot of stuff down in here, and a lot of this greenery, right? Can you see all that greenery? We're trying to fit all these pieces in there, we're trying to find it. And I'm at the point where when we pull this out, we're doing it, we got it on our table, we're working on it. I'm going, is this worth it? This is so hard to find this one little piece that there's 15 green pieces, and I don't know how they go together. Is this worth it? Have you ever felt that way about something in life? I'm feeling that way about this puzzle right now, but there's other things in life I've felt that way before. Sometimes it's in parenting. Sometimes it's in other endeavors that we've gone down. And sometimes, I don't know about you being honest, sometimes we ask that questions even about our faith, our relationship with Christ. Is it worth it to follow Jesus? Is it worth it, this whole living for Christ? And the good thing is we're not the only ones who've had to question that. And that's what Pastor Guy shared with us this past week. He looked at Paul writing the Philippians in chapter 1, verse 19 to 20 or to 30. He's asking this question. He's kind of answering, man, when you're in that place, is it worth it? It's a difficult time. It's how do I keep going in those moments? Paul answers it for us, and he kind of gives us 4 ideas here. Pastor Guy talked a lot about the perspective one, and we're going to hit on that. And that's what he talks about. He says, how do I keep going in a hard time? Well, the first thing is perspective. Paul says, remember and gain a better perspective. When it gets hard in this puzzle, I'm looking at the green, I'm staring at the box, what do? I gain a bigger perspective. I look back to the bigger picture. And that's what Paul says in verse 21 of Philippians chapter 1. He says, remember this. For me to live is Christ, to die is gain. He's saying, guys, it's a win-win situation. Remember, Paul's in prison. He's under Roman guard, and he's shackled. Talk about a guy who's going, is following Jesus, is preaching the gospel worth it? And he says, man, to live is Christ, and to die is gain. What does he mean by that? Verse 23, he says, I'm hard-pressed between these two because my desire is to be with Christ. Man, I want to be with Jesus. I want to just be done with this life and be with him because that's so much better. And Pastor Guy talked a lot about that on Sunday. But then he says to remain in the flesh is more necessary on your account. In other words, but being in life still, being in these chains, being in prison, proclaiming the gospel is important for your faith, to encourage you as you progress in joy in the faith. And so he says the first step when we wonder if it's worth it is to go back to the why. Get that bigger perspective picture. And it's that, man, being with Christ is better, and being in this life is for others' joy and progress in the faith. But sometimes we need more. Then the question becomes, how? How do we do that? And that's where Paul talks about priorities. When it gets tough, regain your perspective and refresh your priorities. Look at verse 27. He says, only let your manner of life be worthy of the gospel of Christ. In other words, reset your priorities. Remember that the gospel of Christ is the foundation, is the utmost importance. And what Paul is saying there is that, man, this is not accidental. To continue in Christ, to keep going when it's hard, when things are difficult, when there's struggles, requires that we reset our priorities. Man, the gospel is worth it. in my family, in my personal life, in my workplace, wherever it may be. The gospel is worth it. And so we do that as we reset our priorities. And we've been trying to do that this whole month at Mountain View in missions, focusing on missions. Man, look at the bigger picture, what God's doing around the world. And are we resetting our priorities to be a part of that? Are we working to be a part of that as well in our priorities and how we live our life? But then he says, don't just look at the big picture and gain perspective. Reset your priorities. But he also goes on to, he says, this means that you're going to have to persevere. There's going to be perseverance involved. Look at verse 28. Don't be frightened in anything by your opponents. This is a clear sign to them of their destruction, but of your salvation, and that from God. For it has been granted to you that for the sake of Christ, you not only believe in him, but also suffer for his sake. In other words, we should not be surprised that it gets hard. Suffering and difficulty in the Christian life is not abnormal. The normal Christian life involves suffering and difficulty and struggle. So be encouraged in that. You're not alone in this. It's normal for us to struggle, to find it difficult some days. And that's when we have to regain our perspective. We have to reset our priorities. We have to remember to persevere. But then Paul tells us something else. He says, if it's hard, if it's difficult, here's one more thing. Remember, you have partners. That you're not alone in this battle. Look at verse 30. Engaged in the same conflict you saw I had, and now hear that I still have. And then in verse 27, he said this. Why? That I may hear that you are standing firm in one spirit, one mind, striving side by side for the faith of the gospel. We are not alone. You are not alone. One of the reasons we're doing these devotionals is to remind you what we're going through, struggles, challenges, is a normal part of Christian life. That the bigger picture is that it's worth it, but that you're not alone. We are in this together. One of the things we're doing right now is our group launch. We're really emphasizing the fact that life is better together. That in the struggle of day-to-day life, whether it's struggling with being, in your home and out of what we thought was routine and normal for our lives, or whether it's a bigger thing going on, some health situation, financial struggles, relational tensions, whatever it may be, God is saying, Paul is reminding us we're not alone, and that's what groups are for. And so I would just encourage you, don't feel alone. Don't be alone. Don't feel isolated during this time. Join a group today. You can do so by going to mvccfrederick.com/groups. Click the Find a Group button and find a group to get in. Remember, you're not alone. That what we're struggling with is not abnormal. It's a normal Christian life. But it's not going to come by accident. We're going to have to reset our priorities. But ultimately that comes when we regain our perspective. When it feels like I can't find the peace to get in my life together, step back, regain the perspective. Regain the bigger picture that God is working. That to be with him will be gain, and to remain will be fruitful labor for others. So I hope you're encouraged in that today. Be a person who has that perspective of a mission of God, to set your priorities around that, to persevere through the difficulty, and even call on a partner when you need it, as you need it. Hey, thanks so much. I hope you'll join us this weekend as we continue our Reset series, as we jump into chapter 2, which is a phenomenal passage as Pastor Guy walks through the first part of chapter 2 in Philippians. So join us online or in person at 9:15 or 11 a.m. And continue to check out the website for mission stuff and anything else as far as groups and other things as well. So hope you guys have a great day. Love you, miss you, and we look forward to seeing you one way or another this weekend at church. Catch you later.